Now, Belt and Road Initiative in South Africa is considered a key part of China's One Belt, One Road efforts and due to its potential for rails, roads, and energy. And according to the Center for Global Development, over 70% of private infrastructure projects in Sub-Saharan Africa were funded by China, and that's between 2007 and 2020. However, with most African countries heavily in debt, it appears China might be making a few changes. Lara Wolf, Sub-Saharan Africa country risk analyst with Fitch Solutions, joins me to share more insights. Lara, good to have you on the program today.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Now, you are of the opinion that China is going to sustain a significant investment in Sub-Saharan Africa despite this. Why do you think so?
Sure. So to clarify, our view is that mainland Chinese investment in Sub-Saharan Africa will decline but remain significant. And the first point is key. As investment is declining, as Chinese lenders and Sub-Saharan African governments become increasingly cautious regarding large Chinese loans, which follows a trend of Chinese investment shifting from large-scale infrastructure projects to new sectors in line with the new small is beautiful policy. However, like you said, we do expect investment to remain significant. And this is because there is a large discrepancy between the levels of funding offered by other partners, such as the United States and the European Union, and the Chinese government. While the US is keen to demonstrate its re-engagement with Sub-Saharan Africa, for example, at the 2022 US-Africa Leader Summit, where they committed $55 billion to advance shared Africa and US priorities, we still expect a discrepancy in commitments, with China continuing to offer substantially more over the coming years.
So is China, because we know that African countries or governments are heavily dependent on this investment from China, but there's not been much traction these days, with some governments even rejecting some of these investments. China is about to shift focus, from what you said. What are some of these areas China is looking at the moment?
Sure. So as China's shifting away from large-scale infrastructure projects, we're seeing a focus on pharmaceutical and healthcare sectors in line with the Health Silk Road policy, digital infrastructure in line with the Digital Silk Road policy. We've seen projects such as the China-aided Africa Center for Disease Control and Prevention under the Health Silk Road, while under the Digital Silk Road, we've seen a rise in online Chinese shopping festivals featuring African goods, investment into undersea cables, broadband networks, and e-payment systems. Other areas of investment will include green energy and finally agriculture, as China remains heavily reliant on food imports.
Okay, you talked about agriculture now, which is essentially necessary now with the food crisis everywhere in the world, high inflation and all that. China has chosen 6 countries in Sub-Saharan Africa to begin with. What are these countries? Why the choice of these countries? And how will they benefit? How will these countries benefit from this program?
Sure. So under China's 14th five-year plan for international agricultural cooperation, it mentions Nigeria, Tanzania, Angola, Botswana, Burkina Faso, and South Sudan. However, as it outlined during the 2021 Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, or FOCAC summit, the commitments to the agricultural sectors will be much more broad-based. So during the FOCAC summit, China committed to send agricultural experts to the continent, pledged to train African agricultural technicians in China, and most importantly, pledged to reduce the trade imbalance between China and the African continent. And this is partly through green lanes. So these green lanes will not only be tariff-free, but China has also pledged to speed up the inspection and quarantine procedures, which will likely see an uptick in agricultural exports to China. One success story that has recently emerged has been the export of Kenyan avocados, but we've also seen upticks in other products such as Zambian soybean meal and Tanzanian avocados.
So is there any particular commodity in Nigeria that China would be particularly interested in boosting at the moment, and how would that work, if you have any information about that?
Absolutely. For Nigeria, a key interest is still oil. with the agricultural focus being more towards East African countries such as Rwanda and Ethiopia, and Southern African countries such as South Africa, where we're seeing an uptick in exports in citrus fruits.
Okay, so you talked about zero tariff for some countries. China just announced zero tariff treatment for 98% taxable items from Niger and Burundi. I'm mentioning countries in Sub-Saharan Africa. Ethiopia is in North Africa, so I didn't even mention that. But does this align with the Silk Road plan China has long term?
So last year we saw 2 announcements regarding this removal of tariffs for 98% of taxable goods. The first round saw a removal of tariffs from 9 African markets in September 2022, with the next round occurring 3 months later in December with another 9 markets. As you said, most recently we've seen announcements regarding Burundi, Niger and Ethiopia, and these tariff removals will happen in March. This is all in line with commitments made during the 2021 FOCAC summit to bolster trade between Africa and China, and also follows on from the decision to remove tariffs on 97% of taxable items, which was announced back in 2015.
I don't know if I missed that because, there's 6 countries that's a key interest for China right now. Nigeria is one of them. So is Nigeria going to benefit from this zero tariff treatment that China is extending to these countries, to other countries? Will Nigeria be part of it anytime soon?
I do not believe that Nigeria is one of the countries, but that is something I'd have to look into.
Thanks so much, Lara, for that. Lara Wolf, analyst, Sub-Saharan Africa Country Risk Fixed Solutions. Thank you for joining us and sharing your insights on the program. It's good to have you.
Thank you.